Hey guys, welcome to another Marketing Monday. I am here with my good friend Wendy O'Donovan Phillips. And I know that normally you get Leanne for a host, but today you get me and Wendy. And the reason for that is that a few weeks ago, we did an amazing webinar. You should have been there. But in case you weren't, we actually have changed. There's probably more detail than you need, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. We've upgraded our Zoom that we use for webinars, and in making that change, somebody forgot to push the record button because we always want to make it available, and so we decided that we would just actually talk about this great concept on Marketing Monday. So, Wendy, welcome. Let's actually start by having you tell us. I mean, I know who you are, of course, but tell us and the rest of the world who you are and what
Sure,
you do,
absolutely.
what you're passionate about.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. And the only thing better than talking to Steve Moran is talking to him twice. So I'm glad to redo this. Yeah, I'm Wendy, and I have been at the helm of Big Buzz for the last 15 years. And we are passionate about senior living, warm leads. A lot of leads in the senior living industry come in cold, and then salespeople work the lead, and ain't no lead that wants to be worked, but that's the way that it works. And so Big Buzz flips that sort of on its head and says, how do we warm up those leads even before they come in your door, even before they have a conversation with you? So that's what Steve and I will talk about today.
So let's actually, you have sort of four big concepts we're going to talk about, right?
Yes.
And we're going to jump right in with the first one. I think in some respects, I love this one the most of all of them. I mean, they're all important, right? But this idea that you actually have to begin the relationship before the relationship begins. What the hell?
All right. So the majority of senior living organizations, we have uncovered data that shows that the majority of senior living organizations predicate their brand on their mission, vision, and values. How are mission and vision and values created? Out of usually the minds of executives. So it's sort of two-dimensional, right? Where this is what we love about us. Brand is really about what the audience thinks, what the residents and family members love most about the organization. And when organizations like your listeners' organizations get the right data in their hands, voice of the customer data, to understand exactly what those residents and family members love most about them, and then paper their world with that, and are extremely consistent. This is another issue in senior living: consistency in brand amplification. When that consistency is there, what happens is that these older adults or their family members who are checking you out land on your website or land on your ad or receive your brochure in the mail, and they go, first, ideally, they go, huh, this is different. Secondly, ideally, they go, I feel like I kind of belong here. I feel like I might be able to trust that this organization could take me on a journey. Now, what I'm not saying is they feel like they belong and they want to move in. And I'm not saying I feel like they could take me on a journey and I want to call somebody. They just sit up and take notice and say, huh, this is intriguing to me, and I'm willing to take the next step. Again, one of the biggest issues that we see in senior living is the misnomer is the next step is a tour. No. The next step is continue to build that relationship, continue to build that trust. So we can do that with brand amplification, where consistently papering the world with voice of the customer data about what the family member and the resident really know to be true about you and love about you, and getting that message to market over and over and over. That's what creates that relationship before they even contact you.
So what you're really talking about, in my view, and maybe I'm not getting this right, but I think this is right, is that you're really talking about having empathy with the prospect so that when a prospect walks in, when they walk into your virtual, which really means your website, they go, oh yeah, they actually get the thing I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
They've been there before, they've helped other people.
Yes. And get empathy is something that comes very naturally to folks in senior living. What does not, what we see a gap in the industry and where we really service clients is standardizing that empathy, right? That there's so much pressure put on senior living sales teams, just connect, be empathetic, and get this. And it's, they're working leads that are cold leads, and there's not enough empathy built up before they even have the conversation. So standardizing that empathy looks like, one, download what's on the hearts and minds of the seniors who you serve by virtue of running some simple surveys. Document that, align the whole team, marketing and sales, on that standard. This is how we speak. This is how we feel. This is how we amplify our brand. And then amplify. I had a mentor say to me one time, Steve, when you start getting sick of your brand message, that means your target audience is just beginning to notice. So stick with one core message. It really is, again, the standardization is a positioning statement. What do you do at what value to whom? And it's not usually about care. It's usually about something much bigger than that in the words and hearts of those who you serve. And then 3 differentiators. How are you different and better than any other option out there, including staying home?
So this is so good. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but I'm going to start. So here's my question, and I'm going to tell you what it is for us. And so I'm going to give you a minute to take a breath. I'm sure you'll be able to answer this. But at Senior Living Foresight, we have a very singular goal, and that's to make the lives of people who live and work in senior living better. And if you were at if you were part of the Foresight team, you'd hear me say that at virtually every gathering that we have. And I sometimes feel like it's overkill, but you'll also, if you were to run into me at a conference or in another place where I've got an opportunity to talk about what we do, I would be talking about it. My big dream is that I want to hear somebody walk up to some operator and say, what do you do? And they say, oh, we make the lives of people who live and work in senior living better. And so that's what you're talking about. So what's yours? Because I'd like to have a couple of examples of this. So let's talk about you.
What we hear from our audience when we survey our clients and prospective clients, what we hear is that Big Buzz attracts a steady stream of warm leads over a long-term basis in order to stabilize senior living organizations. We didn't make that up. I didn't even particularly like it when it first came to fruition. Does not matter if I like it or not. Does not matter. It matters if it aligns with my vision for the company, but it doesn't matter if the nuts and bolts of the words that the clients that we serve, if the nuts and bolts of their words don't exactly like, I was like, that's not how I would say it. Okay, fine. Because they're not buying what I would say. They're buying what's in their hearts and minds. That's why they're loyal to us.
So I really like this. And maybe this would be helpful to owners and operators. I've spent a lot of time over the last 3 or 4 months actually staying in senior living communities and talking to residents. And one of the things that I discovered that I'm actually not very happy about, so it's exactly what you're talking about, is that residents move into senior living because they are concerned about their physical safety. That looks like the number one thing. And I don't want it to be that, right? But that's why they move into independent living, particularly in CCRCs.
So that may be why they move in at the end of a sales cycle. That might be the pain point that pushes them to actually sign. I would pose, Steve, that in all of the research that we've done over the years for various clients across the nation, what we hear are things like, I elected to build a relationship with, Sinceri Senior Living or Cedar-Sinai Park, a couple of our clients, because what resonated with me, with Cedars-Sinai Park, all of their residents and family members talked about how there was a sense of interconnectedness from the time that they were first exposed to the brand all the way through to move-in day and beyond. There was this feeling of interconnectedness, like we're interconnected. It's a Jewish faith-based organization. They're interconnected with the faith, even if they're not of that faith. They're faith-based people, if you will, spiritual people who identify with that. They feel interconnected with the community is such an overused word, with the people who work and live there, and they were already interconnected with them. A lot of prospective residents have friends who live there, right? And then there's this interconnectedness of like that particular brand has been around for over a century. And so there's this interconnectedness to this deep, deep history, right? So across the board, that's what we heard. And then when we started building out that brand and amplifying that brand based upon what folks think and feel instead of what we think or feel, or what Cedars-Sinai Park even thinks or feels, there's a shift, right? Like people go, oh, I think I belong here. I think I'd like to pay more attention to this message. I think I'd like to follow them on social media. I think I'd like to read more of their blog posts. Now we're cooking, right? It's not, I think I want to take a tour. It's, I think I want to dig deeper and see how else I might be connected here. Building the relationship before the relationship even begins.
Yeah, this is so good, because I've been in a few senior living communities where when I walked in the door and started interacting, and it was just how it felt. And it was like, I just kind of feel like I'm home here. And then I've been in other communities where I've walked in and I've kind of like, this is really nice, but I don't feel like I'm home. And that doesn't mean somebody else wouldn't feel like they're home, right? It's not the same for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. But Steve, so think about so that was when you walked in, but think about like a business that you've interacted with recently, but you haven't actually walked into their doors. Like you're interacting with them. Maybe you've been on the website, share, have you had a similar experience where it's like sometimes, like recently I was looking for a new auto mechanic, and I went on one website and read some of their blogs, and I was like, I just don't feel, I have an older BMW. And so I'm picky about it. And so, one of the providers, I was like, they could get the job done, but like, am I dealing with someone who's going to respect me as a woman and who's going to give me fair estimates? And I have this whole list of things that I want, right, as a consumer. And then I landed on another website, started looking at, the work that they've done and the sorts of cars they've worked on. And I'm like, oh, I kind of feel a little bit like I belong here. Like, have you had that experience, like even before walking in the doors?
Yeah, I have. So how do I, as a senior living, and this sort of comes back to what you're doing, right? But how do I, as a senior living owner, operator, marketing person, how do I do that on my website?
You don't. Please do not go do anything to your website today. The first step is to get into the hearts and minds of those you serve. And I am not talking about customer satisfaction surveys, and I'm not talking about Google reviews. I'm talking about, like, over the years, there are lots of different ways to do this. And over the years, Big Buzz has put together 25 survey questions, and we survey residents and family members who know and love the brand. And we ask them things like, how is this organization different than anything else you considered? How did they make life better? What was your deciding factor in choosing them? Really downloading from them, what was your process start to finish? And also, like, what is your passion, and what do you see about this organization that made it illuminated compared to others that you were considering? And what happens, Steve, is that folks share stories about how a senior living organization or people, mainly people working there, transformed their lives. How the adult child could get back to tending to her, ornery teenagers at home and to getting her career back in order, right? How the resident, the adult moving in, could have peace of mind that she's not a burden to her family anymore. This is why people move in. It's not because of care. Like we're so caught up as an industry on like care and safety. And like there are all these like buzzwords, but the things that we hear on these surveys run so much deeper than that, where it's like, I want peace of mind. One that I love is I want better for my elders than what their elders had. Like we're in this generation where we saw our elders, my grandparents go through, I saw one grandparent go through memory care, and I saw one grandparent on the other side of the family who didn't have the resources to have memory care, and he just slowly faded in front of our eyes, right? And these are real stories that we all have inside of us. And when we start extracting those stories from the people who matter most, the people who the senior living that we serve, the residents and their families, that's where it becomes marketing gold. Like marketing starts to, the brand starts to illuminate. And then once you have that message, then and once you've aligned your whole team on it, and executives, investors, marketing executive, sales executive have all signed off and aligned, this is the direction we're headed, then update the website. Please stop updating your website with your mission and vision and values. Your residents and family members, it's just going to get lost in a sea of sameness of your competitors.
I love this. I think that, and as you talked about earlier, the hard part for a lot of people is that sometimes the reason people love you is not because of what you think, the reason they think they love you, and that becomes really, really hard, right? So
not necessarily, Steve. I've been doing this for a long time, and we've worked on hundreds of brands over the years. And what I tend to see, and I will tell you that it's one of my favorite things to do in my career, is to present brand messaging in the voice of the customer to a client. I've had a CEO cry. I've had several people tear up, because what tends to happen is it's deeply, deeply validating. Like we have been trying to be this in so many different ways, but we've never had it articulated so clearly and in such three-dimensional language. Because here's what happens: marketing speak. We have a state-of-the-art set of communities in the rural Oklahoma area, right? Executive speak. Our mission and vision and values that I came up with are, we believe in care for seniors. Okay. And then what residents actually say and what family members actually say is, are things like, they held my father's hand while he was in hospice care. More often than not, there was somebody there to hold his hand and be with him, and they were in deep communication with us. Like it's these stories of how you made life better, and it just is so much richer. And over the long term, results in a steady stream of warm leads instead of, oh my God, occupancy, oh my God, occupancy. Like get off of the oh my God, occupancy merry-go-round once and for all, and just lead with brand. And then our second concept is content marketing. So brand is build the relationship before the relationship begins. And then content is start the conversation before the conversation begins.
Okay, so how do we do that?
All right, so now you have your voice of the customer data. You got everyone aligned. Everyone's singing from the same song sheet. The website's been updated with the main messaging. Now it's time to amplify that message on a deeper level. And Jada, if you can pop up that infographic, that's the best way. You are on top of things. Thank you. So you want to start thinking about content marketing in terms of the conversion process and the business objective. There is so much content in senior living, and sometimes it just becomes content for the sake of content. And don't even get me started about AI writing content. Can we not? Really great content follows that business objective of breaking through the clutter and making a statement. So that's where you're representing your brand. Here's how we are positioned in the marketplace, what we do differently, and what we do at what value to whom. And here are our three differentiators that no one else can claim, and we know that they're true because we got it from the voice of our customers. Then the second business objective is educate, 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 right? Share for their consideration for your family members and prospective residents consideration, share ways that your organization would advise them to solve a particular issue. How to organize, and we see a lot of really great content in this business category, in this consideration category. Excuse me, in this conversion process category. So this is where it's like, how to manage mom's meds when you don't live with her. Signs that your loved one might need memory care. A checklist of annual, this is one of my favorites, a checklist of annual family planning items. So like every January, I meet with I'm responsible for 4 elders in my life. And every January I meet with them and I go through a checklist of, I don't live near you. And so I would like to know, have you seen changes in each other? So this is all really great education that a senior living organization and many of your listeners are putting out in order to build, to have that conversation. They're coming to you and saying, I don't know how to administer meds. And you're saying, oh, I have this lovely blog for you to read. And they haven't had to make the commitment of actually having a conversation, but you're already having a conversation. And then the next pillar is decision. And this is where we see a lot of room for growth in content marketing programs when we come in with clients. It is absolutely appropriate and necessary to drive sales qualified leads through content. Content cannot just be 100% educational. It should be 80% educational and 20% driving sales qualified leads, promotional. I use the word promotional very lightly here because what I don't mean is, and I say this all the time, it's like my mantra, don't ask them to take a tour yet. You're just going to ask them to take the next right step. And that next right step is probably download a guide. When we researched the 10 top providers in senior living, only 20% are offering downloadable guides on their website. This is your ticket to driving sales qualified leads. Like, it's not take a tour, take a tour, take a tour, take a tour. They're not ready for a tour. They're ready for you to be helpful. They're ready to trust you on a different level. They're ready to part ways with an email address in return for a really rich guide of what they can apply in their own life that will then lead them to the conclusion, gosh, I think I need more help than I'm getting. And at the end of that downloadable guide, it's absolutely appropriate to say, if you or your loved one are, interested in getting more insights on how life can look better, interested in getting, a complimentary diagnostic on exactly what your situation may be, not a diagnosis, but a expert opinion on what might be going on, and then some ideas for what to do next, then contact us. Again, we did a bunch of research on calls to action in senior living, and what works best is an offer to connect with like 4 value propositions of like, you will get expert opinion, you will get insights, you will walk away with choices, but not tour, not move in, not like we're offering up all these things that are not valuable to them at that point.
I so love this. I think that as I have had to be a senior living consumer a couple of times for people I love, it's so hard to get good information. And I start thinking about, and I think I'm pretty educated about this stuff. But when it comes down to your mom or somebody you love, right, all of a sudden it gets really, really confusing. And, so that what you're talking about is this idea of people driving for the tour. It's like, well, I don't even know what I'm supposed to tour, right? I got to figure out what level I need, those kinds of things. It's like, and what you're really telling me is you don't really care about me. You only care about you.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And then that effect, if we don't have the relationship before the relationship in place, and if we don't have the conversation before the conversation in place, and we are just, funneling cold leads to the sales team, what happens is the sales team is working out of such desperation to close a gap that is, nearly unclosable because they just haven't had the resources before the sales conversation to make that happen, that they get into presentation mode, right? Let me show you, let me show you, let me tell you, let me tell you, let me show you. And what that creates is this imbalance in the relationship. So our third concept is remembering that it's a conversation, not a presentation. So when that warm lead that has been, the relationship has been built with a really great brand, and the conversation has been started with the really great ecosystem of content marketing, that new lead comes in. When this system works very well, the sales team can relax knowing that their only job is to have a series of conversations in order to assist the family and resident in making the next best choice and keep those conversations moving. So the first conversation is just downloading a list. There's so much listening happening in all of this, right? So downloading a list of what are all of the needs. And here's how this goes, Steve. Usually prospects will go, well, I'm looking for options for memory care. Okay, so tell me more about what's going on. Well, we don't know for sure, but I think my dad's slipping, and I just need some pricing. Can you give me some pricing? When you say slipping, can you give me a little bit more information? So just continuing to drill down and get them talking. And then what are all the signs that you see that's making that happen? Already, you're standing out from the competition because the relationship is stronger. They go, oh yeah, like this is the place that has all those resources. Maybe I should open up to this person and just tell them what's going on. And you get to this point in the sales conversation when it's done correctly, and it's a conversation, not a presentation, where the prospect opens up and says, I watched my grandfather fade away before my very eyes, and I never want that to happen to my dad. And I want to make really great choices right now. Now we're in a conversation. Now we're building upon that relationship that was already built by the brand. And your sales team can deliver on the next right step. It sounds to me like memory care might be one option for your dad, and we do offer that here. I also want to give you a couple of other options. There's a great sales quote by Jeb Blount. Sales is just transferring emotion from one person to the other. When your sales team is equipped and all aligned in the same system, again, systemizing, standardizing all of this, for having these conversations, it becomes one after the other, after the other, after the other, really moving leads through the funnel, and either to move in or out of the funnel. It's really important to move leads out of the funnel too, and stop spending so much time with someone who has no intention of ever moving out of their home.
Yeah, and that's a huge problem, because sometimes you'll have people who love having conversations and they can waste a huge amount of time. But I want to come back. One of the things that kept rolling through my head as you were talking about this conversation is that you start having those conversations, and then you have maybe 6 or 8 stories in your mind that you can say, I don't know, but we had a resident who, or we had a family member who, and you tell this story about how you change the lives of your families and your residents. Yeah. And then the prospects go, oh yeah. Wouldn't it be cool if I had that for my dad?
Yeah. And what we see work best, Steve, and I think this is another one of those like flip it on its head thing. I think in senior living or in any industry, we think it's best to serve up those stories in a sales conversation. We teach organizations to stay. We had a consultant to call it solution agnostic. So sometimes in a sales conversation, sharing a case study or a story about another resident can backfire, where it's like, are you trying to tell me what to do? The sales conversation should really be a series of asking the right questions to get the prospect talking, sharing, talking, sharing, being heard. Like it's all about the salesperson listening. So a really great place to share those stories is through content marketing on the brand, throughout the brand amplification. And then certainly after the sales conversation, those could be shared. But we we really train sales teams, we align sales teams on staying solution agnostic and in order to stay hyper focused on the individual, on the person, because that person, there's nothing in that conversation that is appropriate to that person's head and mind, heart and mind, that we have found in any of our data that says when you start presenting solutions, that's what helps them make a decision. There's a time for that at agreement, but there are at least 3 conversations that need to happen before that even comes. And it's so deeply uncomfortable for salespeople because they know the solution, right? I want to help you and I want to give you the solution. But to stay solution agnostic and just to stay present with that person and where they are, that's what's going to be deeply differentiating for you.
So talk to me about these 3 conversations.
Sure. So the first conversation is really about getting a comprehensive list of needs, facts, motivators. And I emphasize comprehensive because a lot of salespeople want to get the cursory, like, do you think it's like an assisted living thing, or do you think it's like a memory care thing? Not because they don't want to know more, but many of them are pressed for time, and many of them are working with very cold leads, and so they're just doing the best they can, right? Yep. But when you get a comprehensive list, it really boils down into these very personal stories of, like, you're really getting into their history with the aging industry, with the pain points of, like, I mean, I've had clients who've talked about, their prospect starts crying about their teenager at home who's, got an addiction problem, and she needs to turn her attention to him, and then, and needs more support with the older adult in her family, but doesn't know what to do next. Right. So that's the first conversation. And it really should be like 30 minutes to 60 minutes of just asking great questions to keep them talking, and then drilling down to, okay, out of all of these issues, which one is most important and why is that important to you? That's the money question, because that gets people really opening up into, like, their history and opening up their vision for their future. And that's where the real relationship is built and the real trust is built. The second conversation is around value, right? So, like, what value does the prospect expect the organization to deliver? And this is a very, very important conversation that's often missed or misconstrued, where this is not an appropriate time to present pricing. We often, jump right to pricing. This is an appropriate time to recap what the prospect's desired future state is, and then get drill down into, like, what is the value of that to you? Like, what does that open up for you? Well, then I can go take care of my son. Then I can go focus on my career. Then I can have peace of mind, right? And it's hard to put money on some of those things. Right. And then the third conversation is around, we've put together 3 options for you. I have an assisted living option for you. I have a memory care with a roommate option for you. And then I have a memory care private room option for you. Shall we look at pricing? And by that time, the person is ready for looking at pricing, right? But several things have to happen beforehand.
And you actually have lots of places where you might have outs, right? Where somebody clearly isn't a fit, and you can help them figure out what other steps they should do, which means you become helpful rather than just trying to drill for a sale.
Yes. And so what will happen in many, many cases is they'll say, thank you for the information, and we'll call you, we'll call you, right? And then 3 months later, mom falls and they know exactly who to call because they've had such a great relationship, such a great experience with you. When this is executed properly, it's a completely different experience for the prospect, to the point where they already have you elevated, whether or not they're ever going to move in with you. And so they're going to refer you. Those are warm referrals, not agency referrals. They're going to keep you top of mind when when something happens to their loved one, and they may very well choose you and move in with you.
Cool. So we are running low on time. We've gotten ourselves to the point where we're really getting down to the nitty gritty. You got sort of 4 other concepts that love to have you at least just touch bases on before we sign off.
Sure. Yeah. Just very quickly. The fourth concept is gain referrals in every interaction. Again, when you've done this extraordinarily well, it's absolutely appropriate to say, if you found value out of this conversation, please share our contact information with other elders in your community. We'd love to have a conversation with them. Concept 5 is begin care before move in. So you have an agreement in place and then start caring for that individual and his or her family in, small structured ways. It just goes a long way to send, a welcome note, to send moving referrals, to send helpful articles, to call and say, I want to see how things are going and if we can help. Again, when you standardize these efforts, it makes it a lot easier to do it over the course of time. We understand that folks are pressed for time. Concept 6 is publicly celebrate every move-in and milestone. Social media, and content, right? And then number 7, amplify that whole big, broad, sort of, rinse and repeat, right? Go back to brand. Keep amplifying all of those successes across your brand, across your content, in your sales interactions. And then that's the flywheel, right? Like as we continue to do that regularly on a month over month, quarter over quarter basis, you will find traction and you will find that the questions at the executive and investor level are, how shall we scale next, rather than how do we get occupancy stabilized?
Yep. Yeah. So,
and I should say that, Jada, if you pop up that link to, yes, we're offering viewers an audit of their marketing collateral. If you want to know how you stack up to industry benchmarks and data, go to bigbuzzinc.com/audit. We'll help you out.
Yeah, the opportunity is tremendous. I came back from the Nick Spring Conference last week, and there's so much of what do we do? How do we fix our occupancy problem? I know you believe that there are enough people out there who have the financial ability to move into senior living, whose lives would be improved by senior living, that we should have every building full if we can just take these kinds of steps and tell the story right.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
So,
and there's a standard to it. There's a structure to it. It's not just,
right.
more drinking from the fire hose. We see so many sales and marketing teams working so hard, and it does not have to be that hard of work. It could be a standard.
Exactly right. So, Wendy, thank you for your passion for the senior living industry. Thank you for sharing these great ideas. Check out this audit. And the only person who should not check out this audit is the person who's got a completely full building or series of buildings with a wait list, right? Otherwise, this will make you better at what you do, no matter how good you are. So, Wendy, thank you very much. Have a great week.
Thanks, Steve.
And with that, we are going to say goodbye.